When you look at ancient cities, they tend to come in clusters. The ancient Greek city-states all had their own identities, but still recognised a shared Greek culture. In ancient Mesopotamia, you had a bunch of cities all competing amongst each other, and while occasionally one did manage to conquer the others, the status quo for a long time was competition among equals. Ancient Mayan cities shared religious beliefs, structures and writing systems, but were still mostly independent from each other. And it's not just cities. You get things like the heptarchy of Anglo-Saxon England, with distinct kingdoms that competed but still shared things like symbolism and political institutions. And when change happened in one, it usually spread through the others too. So, why? There's a concept in archaeology of peer-polity interaction, where an area has a mosaic of independent polities, and the interaction between them shapes both the individual polities and their shared culture. Polities in this context are the highest independent level of political unit in an area. They can be as small as a town or as big as a state. They're peers because they're politically equal. Sometimes there's competition and polities might start conquering each other, but as long as power is contested between multiple entities, they're probably still interacting as peers. And sometimes a few polities will ally with each other, but as long as they're interacting as independent equals rather than as a centralised government, they're probably still peer polities. Honestly, it's kind of disputed among archaeologists exactly where the line is. But a strict definition of what counts usually isn't as useful as looking at how the model works. So, peer polities tend to share a lot of things: architecture, writing systems, measurement systems, religious beliefs, ideologies, symbols. And when significant changes to these things happen in one polity, they usually happen to the rest too. It's not just that they're starting out with the same cultural building blocks, and so they'll inevitably arrange them the same way. Humans aren't that predictable. Even if two cities right next to each other share a language, they aren't just going to spontaneously develop the same writing system. What we're seeing is similarities arising from interaction, and there are a few major ways that can happen. First up, there's competitive copying. If the city next to yours starts building a temple to show how much they love the gods, don't you want to show you love the gods even more? But the first city has already kind of set a standard, so your temple's probably going to look a lot like theirs. If there's warfare between the polities, all of them are forced to put more resources into warfare, and often copy each other's military institutions and tactics. They all play by the same rules. Then there's the spread of technologies, because they fill niches not already filled. If, for example, one city starts widely using a measurement system, it's really easy for the other polities to start using it too. It's already got some legitimacy, maybe even prestige, because it's been proven to work in that first polity. And it's easier to trade when you're all using the same measurement systems, so there's strong incentive for similarity. And because these polities interact so much, awareness and acceptance of new, more efficient technologies can spread quickly between them. Lastly, there's the acceptance of ideology. Ideology is often used in archaeology to mean the beliefs a society has about its social relations. So shared ideologies and political institutions often go hand in hand. Let's say a group of cities all have kings, and the dominant ideology says that kings are essential and all-powerful. The ideology is reinforced by the fact that they all have kings. Then suddenly, one of these cities has a revolution, and now it's a democracy. People from the other cities are going to notice. And maybe the other kings will try and make sure that that democracy fails to prove that kings are essential after all, and so keep the polities politically homogeneous. Or maybe there will be revolutions in the other cities too, now that kings are proven not to be essential and all-powerful. Something like this might have contributed to the Bronze Age Mediterranean and classic Maya collapses. A lot of the research on peer polities is to do with their similarities, but I want to take a quick look at the ways they distinguish themselves, just because I think it's cool. Often peer polities would develop the same methods to show power, but attach different markers of identity. For example, in ancient Greece, you get a bunch of cities projecting their wealth and legitimacy through striking their own versions of the same coins, each city using a different symbol. Athens used the owl for Athena, Knossos used the labyrinth because of the Minotaur myth. My favourites are Rhodos and Milos, which both used puns. But probably more common is the association of peer polities with patron gods. These gods would usually be shared across the culture, but be particularly emphasised in certain places. In ancient Mesopotamia, cities had patron gods they'd build temples for, and the importance of the city was often reflected in how other cities regarded their gods. Marduk, the patron deity of Babylon, was kind of irrelevant in the 3rd millennium, when Babylon was just a minor city. But when it became more prominent, Marduk became the head of the shared pantheon. In ancient Greece, many of the symbols used by cities were to do with their patron gods. Sometimes different cities would adopt different versions of the same god. Athens had Athena, but Tegea had Athena Alea. And ancient Italy. Before Rome became a major power, it was just one of several Latin polities. When they started going to war with other towns and cities, they'd sometimes perform a ritual, evocatio, where they'd steal a place's patron deity by promising to build them a temple and worship them more in Rome. You might have noticed that most of the examples I'm using for this are from the ancient Mediterranean. And that's because the concept of peer polities originated from archaeologists working there, and also because it's the area I have the most information on. The concept is also used a lot in the archaeology of Mesoamerica, particularly Aztec and Mayan cities, but it's also been applied to understand things like the Hopewell tradition of the North American eastern woodlands, or the interactions between Japan and Korea in the 5th and 6th centuries AD. And I think it's interesting to view changes in an area over time as coming not from a single dominating source, or from an outside influence, but from a network of interaction where everything develops together.